You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. We're back on day 2 of coverage of Typhoon Vongfong, Philippine name Ambo. Well, technically, over in the Philippines, it's still day 1, but here at Force 13 HQ in Manchester, UK, it's another day. We were up very late last night, but we're here. We've got to time our things properly because it's unrealistic for us all to just sit through the whole night and into today because we wouldn't really function effectively. But here we are right now, and we're here with you for the next few hours during this critical point of Typhoon Vongfong, which made landfall earlier today, local time, during the day. I can't remember exactly when it was now, maybe 6 hours ago, in Northern Samar, something that we never thought would happen. Right now, it looks like an appalling mess, I'm pleased to say. It is still pretty strong though. The JTWC have just put out their latest ATCF estimate, which has it at 100 miles per hour, which is 160 kilometers per hour, and a pressure of around 974. We think that pressure's a little high. We've got our pressure down at 966 with the same wind speed of 100 miles per hour. I've got to say something, at this rate the storm is weakening drastically. Let's hope it continues, because if it does, we could be talking about this thing not even being a typhoon at all by the time you wake up tomorrow morning in the Philippines. Here's hoping, not saying that's going to happen. It could just as easily re-strengthen, and that's why we're here to talk about it tonight. My name's Nathan Foy. I'm joined by the team in this hour, which consists of quite a few people. I'm joined by Isaac, Preston, Strat, and Craig for this hour of coverage. Good afternoon, morning to you all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And this is one that's really got us having sleepless nights, that's for sure. And again, we appreciate you all for tuning in once again to our coverage. What I've heard on the lines is that there's been some major damage in parts of Northern Samar. I don't have images. That's just some anecdotal hearsay that I've heard from people. Wouldn't surprise us, would it? Because it was a Category 3 landfall with winds of around 115, 120 miles per hour. If you do have any reports, well, anything really, if you're in the Philippines, your local conditions, where you are, what things are like, how people are reacting, anything like that, please send them in. And if you have any questions, you can also do that too. Start your message with Force 13, all in text. It will light up big and bright for us. Usually we would be simulcasting on Facebook. That's what David does for us, but it's not his time of day at the minute, so we are just on our YouTube stream at this point. It's 4 minutes past 9 in the Philippines, and Typhoon Vongfong has winds of around 100 miles per hour and a pressure of 966 millibars. Let's cross over to the team then. Who shall we speak to first? Let's talk to Strat. What have your thoughts been on this storm overnight?
I mean, obviously the structure's degraded significantly. Land interaction is definitely having a strong impact on the storm. Unfortunately, it looks like we did not get any luck with any really significant west-northwest turn, and this thing is just plowed into northeastern Samar, and by the looks of it is continuing to do so at this point. We're still not seeing too much of a northward jerk at this point, but regardless of that, Samar is getting the brunt of the impact from the storm at the moment, and we could start to see a trickle over into the Bicol region during the stream today.
Might want to disagree with you slightly on that. Let me just get some global imagery and show you the last 24 hours. It's not so good quality, but what it does show you is the progression of the storm in the last 24 hours, and I think this could be quite important if I could get the thing to work. We'll get there eventually. Well, I'll tell you what, Whilst I prepared that, because I think it's quite important, let's take a look at what Isaac's screen is showing. No, but before we go to that, let's take a look at the warnings, because we've not spoken about that. These are the latest tropical cyclone signal warnings from Pegasa. Signal 3 warnings extending all the way up to central Quezon now at this point. Let's just see if we can downsize that image so we can see the whole thing. There we are. So Signal 3 warnings for the northern half and more of Samar, including the island of Biliran. Also from Masbate, Tikau and Burias Islands, Sorsogon, Albay, Camarines Sur, Camarines Norte, Catanduanes, and southeastern Quezon, as well as the island of Marinduque. Signal 2 warnings further south, the rest of Samar, the northern tip of Leyte, I think that includes Tacloban, Romblon, Batangas, Laguna, and Rizal, as well as Polillo Island as well. Signal 1 warnings in effect for a little bit more of Leyte. Some of those islands there towards its west. I do beg my pardon, I'm not sure which ones those are by name. Occidental Mindoro, Cavite, Metro Manila, and then a lot of Luzon up north there, as far northwest as Pangasinan, and as far northeast as Isabela. Signal 1 warnings there currently in effect. So that's the extent of our warnings right now. Let's go over to Isaac's screen. He's showing us some radar imagery of this storm right now. And I think he did take some time away, so I don't know if anyone else in the room would like to comment on what that's showing right now.
Go ahead, Strat.
No, I go for it, Preston.
Someone.
Well, it's definitely showing that it's a lot very disorganized. The rain band starts to wrap around the main center of the storm as it continues its march to the west. Currently, heavy rain still impacting the island of Samar as the storm passes through the island.
Yeah, compared to what we were seeing about 12 hours ago, just about, when we had despite the infrared looking iffy, a pretty solid inner eye wall on radar, if not concentric eye walls. It's a mess in comparison right now, but that doesn't discount the danger that this storm still poses due to its still strong winds and undoubtedly heavy rainfall that it's going to be dumping, particularly over more mountainous areas.
I think Craig wanted to pipe up there as well. I think we're having a little bit of trouble, but we'll try and get you right now. Craig?
It just looks like a disheveled, destroyed typhoon. A mere shadow of what it was merely a few hours before landfall. Needless to say, I'm grateful that it has fell apart. I didn't exactly expect it to fall apart this quickly, but regardless of it, it's falling apart quickly, and it might spare a few extra parts of the Philippine regions. But regardless of it, heavy rainfall has been persistent over Samar even since the typhoon made its landfall. So extreme flooding, potentially some landslides even potentially have occurred. I haven't heard much either about damage, but I'm just hoping it's that people are okay and that there's no casualties. I hope there isn't, but I'm just amazed at how quick that's fell apart.
Yeah. Let's now show you the actual track of the storm in the last 24 hours. I've drawn a line here showing the hourly positions of this storm in the last 24 hours, so you can see what's actually happened. So you can see there it was initially bending just south of west, then it was west into that landfall, and now in those last few frames we are seeing a little bit more northwest. What do you guys think of that right now?
Well, I think it's trying to do the curve it was supposed to do about 24 hours ago.
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to put it. We're just at least a few dozen miles too late for Samar to have avoided the brunt of the impacts. But if it verifies here, then you're probably going to end up seeing a lot more land interaction than what anyone was really forecasting yesterday. And that could contribute to the storm potentially being weaker further out in the forecast timeframes than we were prior expecting.
Yes, and that is one of the good things about this. You know, you got to take one or the other. What is very bad news for Samar is good news for a lot of other places. Imagine if a lot of the models were calling for landfall in Catanduanes, for instance. Now, the way this storm had been going, as it was approaching Samar, it was just about to start another intensification phase. I got that impression, right? So if it was coming up to Catanduanes, it had an extra 12 hours. You could have been talking, given the small size of this storm, I'm not exaggerating, you could have been talking about a borderline Category 5 landfall on Catanduanes. And then further towards the northwest, it could still have been a Category 5 by the time it reached Luzon, because we've seen it before, Typhoon Nul in 2015. But this hasn't happened. Nonetheless, there is still a major typhoon landfall that has taken place on the island of Samar, which will be delivering wind speeds of over 160 kilometers per hour still right now. Initially, it would have been more towards 220 kilometers per hour. That's sustained with higher gusts, and also delivering huge amounts of rainfall, potentially up to 300 millimeters of rain. And we actually have a chart for that as well. Let's just get to this for you. I just want to show you this if we can. What you're about to see next on this screen is the latest satellite estimated rainfall rate. The rate of rainfall that's falling right now. This is in the last... the graphic depicts how much rain has fallen in 1 hour. Now, I appreciate it doesn't mean much to you until I tell you what the colours actually mean. So those blues there, you're starting with the very light blues up to the dark blue. The dark blue is 5 millimeters of rain per hour. Then you've got the greens, which gets you up to 10 millimeters per hour. Yellow up to 15 millimeters per hour. Orange starts at 20. Then you get that pink color at 30. And then you have red at 40. And then you have purple. There's a tiny little bit of purple there just offshore. That's 45 millimeters of rainfall per hour. So bearing that in mind, if we take a look at a little progression of imagery on this, if it loads quickly, hopefully we'll get some kind of idea just how much rain has fallen over the islands according to satellite. So you can see there during the main part of, as the imagery continues to load, during the main part of the storm's landfall, those numbers over the central part of Samar, I think, are actually off the charts there. Let's just home in on some of that. Just go back a few frames. If you look at, no, where'd it go? Yeah, that point there, that's interesting to see. Off the chart, that's remarkable. So you can see that small little, that grey area, that tiny little bit of grey, which is, as you can see on the map, over the very central part of Samar Island. That right there, inside that grey zone, that's 75 millimeters of rain per hour or higher. Obviously, that only lasted for probably just the 1 hour, so it won't have accumulated much more than that before it started to go. But that's some of the highest numbers I've seen on there. So in layman's terms, flooding, I would imagine, could be a big problem on Samar right now. And if anyone does actually know or has a report from there, please send your messages in. Start your message with Force 13, all in text, and we'll take some of those comments shortly. Before that, any other comments from you guys right now?
I was going to say, in the Discord server, actually, in our live comms room, there are some images that are being posted directly from the Philippines right now, if you're able to pull some of those up. David has done some great due diligence of being able to find a couple of these just to show off, and definitely some significant damage ongoing.
Yes, I've seen these images elsewhere as well. Here's one of the images that we saw earlier. That's the first one that we're looking at. What exactly is that at the back there? Is it part of a roof?
I think that's some part of a metal roof or either a wall of some sort of structure.
Of course, in a lot of these places, they have a lot of corrugated roofs. And that is also the voice of Luke, who has just joined us. Welcome. And looking again, there's that second image showing a lot of, quite a bit of defoliation. You can see those high, tall palm trees in the background there being blown away. That looks like we're probably talking at least 50-mile-an-hour winds at that point, possibly typhoon force. Hard to say just looking off one picture. Let's take a look at another image that was sent in. There's this one showing some more just general debris. It's nothing major. You're talking probably category 1, maybe into lower category 2 range winds, looking at that at worst. So those are the 3 images that we've got so far, which I did see elsewhere earlier today, but that's just a little snippet into what we've seen so far, and probably more to come. Alright, we will get some more questions soon, but let's talk to Luke. What are your thoughts on what we've seen in the last 12 to 24 hours?
Well, we just seen this major change in this track. I mean, I don't think any of the models showed this even making it like near a landfall in Samar. And just guess what? Last night we just saw this westward turn, and it hit Samar. And now we're seeing this flooding problem across the island.
Right. Okay, well, there's loads of questions coming in, and I know early this morning we spent the whole last hour of our stream taking questions pretty much. We're happy to do that again. It's Kyle says, it was expected that Ambo would landfall in the Bicol region, but it hit eastern Samar way earlier, and why is that? Well, I can certainly tell you how it did that, because you can see that line there showing the track, which pushed it a little bit further towards the south. It must be something to do with steering and ridging, Strat.
Yeah, I was going to say, we had a bit of a discussion about this on last night's stream, actually, is that to the north of the storm, models were generally anticipating an area of high pressure to be at least a little bit weaker and allow the storm to try to curve off a bit earlier and miss a more direct impact on Samar. But I guess a mix of high pressure being stronger than expected from the general model consensus and the storm being small led to it being able to not have as much of an influence to push north. You know, a smaller storm can't really reach up into the atmosphere the same way to kind of force in direction than what a high pressure system would try to push it in, compared to, let's say, a very large storm like Mancut, if you're talking about a size comparison. A storm the size of Vongfong just won't have the same capability. Those factors together, unfortunately for the island of Samar, have seen the storm continue to move further west than forecast, and is now well inland over northeastern Samar.
Yep, I just lost my whole train of questions there. I was going to go right through some. The first one that I did see was a question about what winds to be expected in Sorsogon, which is pretty much the southeastern tip of Luzon there, so it's very close to the center of the storm at this point. I would imagine that you will get typhoon conditions, probably winds of around 120 to maybe 140 kilometers per hour. That's sustained winds. There will be higher gusts, which at times could be as much as 200 kilometers per hour, so take all precautions. One of the worst things that you get in hurricanes and typhoons is loose objects, and they can be killers when you've got projectiles moving at the wind speed of the storm. So if you have anything on your property that is not in the house or safely secured, fastened down, whatever it takes, make sure that gets done. We had some more questions that came in there as well. I may have missed some because I had a little changeover here. How fast is it falling apart? At the minute, I would say quite fast, but this storm could pull surprises, I can tell you that much. It is starting to move over water again, so you never know, we could see it start to get its core back. As it stands, it's still a Category 2 typhoon, with winds of 100 miles per hour, that's 160 kilometers per hour sustained.
Hey, I mean, it did pull... Sorry.
Go ahead, I just keep going on when I hear silence, so go right ahead.
Well, I mean, it did pull a few surprises yesterday when it kept marching west, and plus it redeveloped after we thought that it was probably going to not strengthen anymore before landfall, but obviously it did right before landfall. So it could pull a surprise, as Nathan said. I don't think it's very likely. It re-intensifies due to just the structure being totally destroyed this morning and this evening in the Philippines.
And speaking of which, Craig has sent in an image of that, which we're showing on the screen now. Craig, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, that's basically showing what was Typhoon Vongfong structure that's been completely destroyed by the terrain of Samar. There's no distinction of an eye wall. There's no real distinction of curve bands or any form of spiral banding at all. But you can see that there is a dry slot on the western quadrant of the typhoon. On the eastern side, which you saw from last night's microwave imagery, was the weakest part. Now you're seeing the eastern side on the microwave imagery is now the strongest part. So I find that quite interesting in how that side has suddenly become the strongest from being, well, the weakest.
I would imagine that would remain the case because that's the side that's now over the most water.
Yeah,
I would assume so, yeah.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought the reason why. Because since it was moving west, the eastern side probably got absolutely wrecked by the Samar region. So, yeah, that's probably the best answer for that.
Yeah, I will say for sure, compared to last night, the internal structures we're seeing from this microwaves now, thanks to Craig, is appalling in form, which is good for people that may be in future's harm's way from the storm, because it means even if it were to have chance at re-intensifying, that it would be harder for it to do because it would have to rebuild its structure in a relatively short time frame that it would have over water between some of the more islands right now.
This
Well,
will roll on and on though, because even if it loses typhoon status, even if the winds aren't becoming deadly and damaging anymore, this will still be a big rainmaker, and we know how susceptible. Well, it's not necessarily susceptibility, but it's the tropics and the deep tropics and how much rain these storms can actually produce. As I said just before, one area over Samar, 75 millimeters in an hour. Huge amounts of rain which could lead to flooding, which will probably end up being worse than the winds.
Yep. It is important to note with cyclones in general that a relatively small amount of deaths from cyclones are directly related to wind. Typically, they're related to some sort of flooding.
Flooding, yeah.
So,
Craig, did you want to go ahead before?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on what Strat was saying. If you really think about it, you could technically go on for, say, the Malor theory and how we saw that core basically fell apart, and we didn't really, well, I didn't really think it would come back, and then it crossed into the sea before making its landfall, before getting sheared apart, becoming a Category 4 again, in this case, maybe a Category 3 again. That depends if it does do that thing, which I'm hoping not. I don't want it to do that. I just want it to go away quietly and fade away, like everybody else.
I think that's much less likely.
I don't think that's going to happen, mainly because of just how small this storm is, and because of that, it's more susceptible.
No, it's not that. It's Malor had a lot more water over, which it could strengthen there.
Yeah, I think Vongfong at this point would probably be lucky to have 4 hours between two landfalls if it kept up this current track, just because the separation between the two islands that it's probably going to move between is relatively small, unless it were for some reason to jerk to the east and travel towards Contrindanes, but that's not particularly as likely anymore.
No, we're probably talking about a west-northwesterly direction now. I mean, I could draw a crude little cone if you like. A polygon here. My idea of a cone from this point is probably something like this. Looks more like a funnel. That's probably where it's going to go next, and I would err towards the south side of that cone, I would say, actually.
So the Gaza City.
Yeah, you'd probably need a bit more of a wobble towards the east and more northerly direction to have it get to the far right side of the screen on that part. I think we are more likely to see a move kind of either in the center of that or towards the left side more than anything else.
Now,
There were a lot of questions flooding into the chat right now.
We'll get
if we
there
wanna
in just
answer
a
some.
moment. There's another image from Samar. What is this? Do we know? It doesn't look good.
I believe that is the coastal region of Samar. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that is water potentially coming into the port area of a region of Samar in the first images. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
images you're showing.
The last
I-
one
I-
that's been shown here. I
this
have no
last one,
idea
I
what
would-
that is.
I
I
presume
can-
it's some
Yeah.
sort of outdoor venue.
I can
I
see
agree with
sort of
that.
like this industrial factory, something like that hints it in like the left of I think a window most likely.
Yeah, it sure
Whatever
don't
it
look good.
is, it's not good. Yeah.
Regardless
Okay.
of
Let's go to questions. Any chance of another re-strengthening? I hope not. We all hope not. Again, that depends on how much water it goes over to a degree. At the minute, it doesn't look like we're going to see much strengthening, and hopefully that remains the case. Anything on the area of interest in the Atlantic? Oh no.
It's going to be a mess if it does form.
Yeah, although
I
we'll
think-
say it is pretty likely at this point, whether we like it or not, that we're going to see the 6th straight season of preseason activity in the Atlantic. They just gave an update an hour ago. 40% in the next 48 hours, 70% in the
No,
next
really?
days.
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
it's
Yeah.
on my screen.
Oh my goodness.
And
So-
I haven't seen the latest models on it, but there's still a development consensus at this point in time.
So let's go
And
Ridiculous.
generally, it's believed that it'll get pulled off to the east, away from shore,
Yeah.
around the 5-day mark.
And just a point here about this Atlantic thing. Hey, this is pretty serious. The GFS model thinks at the moment that it will become a tropical storm just as it's passing over Grand Bahama.
Yay.
Yep.
Talk about
And-
Robin the winds.
noteworthy enough is that the general consensus for models on the location of this storm has shifted west a good bit, so it's going
It
to be
has, yeah.
significantly closer to the outer banks of this than was thought a day ago. It was
You know
thought
what?
to be more likely then.
You know what this is
that it
really
could-
reminding me of? It's really reminding me of Tropical Storm Beryl in 2012.
Wasn't that the one that... No, that was not the one that never went away, right?
That's the one that started off a lot like this, and then it formed to the east of Florida, and then it didn't know what it was doing, and then it eventually made landfall in Florida, northern Florida.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see a northern Florida landfall this time, unfortunately.
Yeah,
for them,
probably
at least.
not. It'll probably get swept up, but the trend is getting a little bit slower.
If the
the
trend
models-
continues, maybe a Carolina impact of some sort later down the line, but that's still
Well-
too far out to say with any certainty.
Let's not go there.
If I had to compare this, I would say probably Anna, from what year? But it was like
2015?
it was off the South Carolina coast, like the Carolinas
Yeah,
coast, and
2015.
actually made landfall on Mother's Day.
More questions. Is it possible for it to hit China? Well, I would say that's extremely unlikely. Yeah, virtually no chance of that. So that might be good news, whichever way you look at that. What else do we have? I don't think there's... You said there were loads of questions, Strat. What have you seen?
They're further down in the chat. I think you're like way up in the time frame.
I'm way...
Someone's asking, is it tracking more westerly now towards Takao and people are asking.
No, not at the minute.
A lot of questions.
It could still do that, but the chances are it will probably not. We're probably going to be looking at a landfall in Sorsogon very soon, in about maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then it will probably ride up the coastline there, moving through the Bicol region up towards Camarines Sur, Camarines Nord, and then it will probably exit the coast there, pass very close to the Polillo Islands, and then make landfall in Luzon, probably somewhere in Aurora or maybe Isabella. And if it did do that, we wouldn't see much intensification.
Yeah, and that's a lot of answer. Pretty much a lot of people are curious on what would happen if the storm were to continue moving west of forecast, although it looks like we have seen this turn towards the west-northwest that we were expecting, just about 16 hours late.
Here's another question. Are we going to make a video of the system in the Atlantic? Well, the way it's
If it
going,
forms.
you never know. You never know. But I'll tell you what, there's one more priority bigger than that, and that's the still massive potential of a monster cyclone striking Bangladesh and Myanmar in the next week. That's something else that we're watching extremely closely. At the moment, when it comes to cyclone season, we've had a dead start, and now it's May. It's not raining, but it's pouring, I'm afraid. And Vongfong is the first of what could be a few events that may happen in this next 7-day period. More questions. The storm went west unexpectedly. Do you think it will do another unexpected west before it recurves? I don't think so at this point, considering that it's already started moving a little bit northwest there, you can see on that line. There might be a wobble, a short-term 2 or 3 hour wobble west, but I don't think we're going to see it now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on that Bay of Bengal storm, I think that the models haven't become as consistent as they were before on terms of track, but intensity is still very concerning, to say the least.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, go for it.
I've never seen any models like such an agreement of something below like 960
Yes.
millibars, and it just frightens me. Don't like the situation at all.
It's
Say
definitely
is
something
that
to keep in
regardless-
the mind, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
What I will say is that regardless of any, potential intensity, there's a pretty general consensus that we'll see some sort of significant cyclone out of the system. Is that there is still quite a large uncertainty over where it might make landfall. The European model, for example, has it not even being very close to Bangladesh at a landfall point, significantly further south of eastern India. While other models like the GFS, for example, have it going straight into eastern Bangladesh, near the border with Myanmar. And you'll have a plethora of other models saying different things as well. The NavGem, for example, has it closer to the Europeans' location as a very strong storm. So you can't really pin down any possible landfall point at this point in time. But just because it's going to be heading north in the Bay of Bengal, the only place really end up, unless it were to somehow magically disintegrate, is land somewhere.
All right. Nearly 33 minutes past 9 p.m. in the Philippines right now. You're watching the latest coverage on Typhoon Vongfong, which continues to barrel towards the northwest. It has plundered through the island of Samar, made a landfall there as a Category 3. It's now down to a minimal Category 2, 100-mile-an-hour winds. It is still weakening at this point, but at the moment, those winds are still very dangerous, and the rainfall amounts are extraordinary, I've got to say, at this moment. So flooding, I would be very worried about if you are in a flood-prone area. More questions. Can we make a West Pacific 1961 animation? Well, I'm building a request list. The request list is already getting very long. I've put it on your request list, and it will probably come out in August. That's how far we are on this request list now. So look forward to that. But we'll take requests. We'll do anything. What do we think? Well, we've had questions about the Atlantic storm already. We'll talk about more later on. Is it tracking? Oh, you saw that one, Strat. Yes. Let's see if we've just got any new questions. There's a question.
More questions.
Can a black ocean effect happen? Well, I've never heard of a black ocean effect. There is the brown ocean effect, which is when a storm moves over an area of land that has very high either water saturation or moisture. We're talking things like swampland. Florida Everglades is an excellent example of that. The Louisiana as well. In the Philippines, there isn't very much of that. It's a lot of mountains, so no, there's not really going to be any brown ocean effect at all in the terms of Vongfong.
Yeah, more likely than not, you'll see only land disrupting the core of the system and weakening it, as we've seen to this point. with the complete dishevelment of the system in comparison to what we were looking at last night before landfall.
If because of this westward trend that we had for the past couple of hours, it's gonna have to go through more islands, which is going to it's not gonna allow the storm to re-intensify. It's gonna make it weaken. It's gonna have a brief amount of time over water before it impacts Luzon, but I don't think it can get its core back together after that.
Yeah, that's very well said. It's really disheveled right now. It has a very low chance of, in my opinion, intensifying further unless it can get some open water, but that looks increasingly unlikely.
So, someone's asking about storm surge. If you want to answer that one, Nathan.
We'll get there in a moment.
I think just
another
because
question. I am catching up with another question we've received. Here it comes. What will the economy loss be for the already financial wrecked Philippines because of the C word, pandemic? And I just want to make a wider point on this. It's not going to be very good, I'm afraid. This storm will probably cost in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So they usually do these types of typhoons, but the economic effect of the pandemic is going to be astronomical. We've already seen it's larger than the Great Depression in some areas. In the United Kingdom, at least, more people have died in some towns than who died in World War II. So there are enormous implications of the pandemic, and that will affect the world for at least the next 10 years, possibly 20, in my opinion.
And I'd say in terms of economic impacts related to Vongfong being impacted by the C word, is that, it'll be harder to rebuild things out the gate because I'm not sure about the local conditions in the Philippines, but, stay-at-home orders mean that construction in general, if not deemed absolutely essential, won't really happen for the time being. So you might see some of this damage just be there for a while and not be picked up because people can't go out when there's no cyclones forcing evacuations for their own safety.
Yeah, never thought of that one. Would the Bengal storm be bigger than Sandy? Well, I don't think it's going to be bigger than Hurricane Sandy because Sandy was huge. It's probably going to get stronger than Sandy. That's a whole different kettle of fish. Does Vongfong have a chance to get into the South China Sea? Yes, I would say that chance is very low, less than 10% though. So I wouldn't bet on that at all. Let's see, have we caught up to Strat yet? No, we haven't. Can we do a season animation for the Atlantic in 1066? Well, we don't have any records of storms that happened in the Atlantic in 1066. The best we can do is 1494. So any year after that, we'll consider it. And there's the storm surge question. Well, it's a rather small storm, so storm surge isn't going to be a huge threat from this. There will be, obviously, very destructive waves, but given the small size of the storm, there will be I should imagine there'll be a modest storm surge, but I don't think it's going to be anything huge.
You won't see a storm surge from from a storm that was as long-lived and as large as, just as an example, Katrina, even Matthew in the Atlantic Oceans, or even Mancut in the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, not only is the storm smaller, but it's in general had significantly less time to gather steam around it to the point to pose a very, very major threat from storm surge. But if you are in a very low-lying coastal area that's already been impacted, you can't ever rule out storm surge to have some sort of role.
And don't forget that atmospheric pressure can have a effect on storm surge, because a lower pressure means less pushing down on the water, so the water is actually of a higher level where the pressure is lower than where the pressure is higher. So that's another point. If a storm makes landfall with an extremely low pressure, you're going to get an enormous storm surge.
Yep, that's very true. Someone's asking a question. What would happen if the storm stalled over the island right now?
That would be very bad news, and it would completely drown. It's not good. I don't think we're going to see any stalling. It sort of actually did stall just a little bit about 6 hours ago. It moved only about 10 or 20 miles in 3 hours, and it has started to get on the move a little bit again. So I think we've seen the worst of any stalling, you'll be pleased to know.
Hello,
Who's that?
Isaac.
Isaac, welcome back.
I have my radar on my screen now, and I'm able to see the eye on radar now. Pretty much. Well, it's over those two land masses right there.
Is
I don't
it
know the life of me
really?
what those two areas are called.
Well, if
But,
that's
it's
true, the
over there.
satellite appearance is completely wrong.
It could be the other way around too, and be the radar has it in the wrong position right now.
Yeah, that could
So
be
it's either one or the
possible.
other.
I mean, if we look at radar, I mean, like, how old is that imagery?
It's from it's 8:15 my time, so that's about 20 minutes ago or so.
Okay.
That's outrageous.
Huh. Though.
I mean,
But
I
it
will
has the
say,
eye out.
No, that would mean that the what appears to be the satellite center is somewhere around here, and the radar center is 38 miles west.
I think I can.
It doesn't make any
see
sense.
it.
well,
If that's true,
I mean, I want to see that verify out first. Is there other radars that could show something the similar
Well,
area?
This is all the radars right now currently in
it's the
operation.
composite. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and you can
jeez.
see just the loop. So I'm guessing the radar is misaligned, so it has it farther west than
I
what
don't
satellite
know.
shows.
Something's misaligned. That's quite a revelation right there. We'll
Let's
do our
let's maybe
best
wait
that
another
day,
15 to 30
Well,
minutes
that's the only thing we
and
can
see
do.
if that still holds.
Let's take some more questions then. It looks like it's become the request show. Can you make the 2012 West Pacific Typhoon season version 2? Well, we did do 2013 not so long ago. That seemed to go down pretty well. I'll add that one to the list, but you're probably looking at late August by now, by the time that will come out. But we're doing our best. We respond to demand. If people want to see, if 100 people want to see a particular animation, we'll do it. And that's going to start all those questions about people saying, can you do this particular animation? We know which one we're talking about. Anyway, people asking about 91B. We did cover that just before. It does have significant potential, and we will be ramping up coverage on that soon as well. In fact, as it stands right now, as soon as it becomes a tropical depression, we'll be doing a video update on 91B.
Yep. Was it people were asking about the Bay of Bengal storm a little bit, asking could it have a chance to hit the western Bay of Bengal in India instead of Bangladesh and potentially Myanmar? That is on the table still. You know, we're too far out to consensus directly on where a landfall on the system would end up occurring, especially because we don't have a well-defined center yet. So you need that really to get the accurate track forecast possible.
Yes.
You have a whole range from
model tracks are pretty useless until you've got that center defined.
We'll say if you're looking for a landfall area, probably from the central east coast of India northward to all of Bangladesh to all of coastal Myanmar. You could look for basically the whole northern ring of land areas for the Bay of Bengal, because you know the storm is not expected to randomly move south and away in general when it does eventually form.
That's a very, if you are in the region of eastern India, Myanmar, and southern Bangladesh, keep a very close eye on the developments with 91B, as it could be a potentially major system that affects your area.
Okay, some more questions. What happened to Tropical Archive? What on earth did happen to Tropical Archive? No, it is still out there. It's going. Just search it up. Or you can find it through our YouTube page. It is part of Force 13. It's run by our member Jason. And if you just look at the channels section, it should be listed there. It should still be listed there. Will it make it to Tokyo? No. It could be a post-tropical cyclone. It could have quite a large wind field. It's not going to be anywhere near tropical by the time it gets to central Japan. What's the most important thing to know when predicting a path for a cyclone, and what do you look at? So I'll let you guys answer that.
Well, what you want to look at is like the general trends, and say if it's already has a low level center, the models are pretty decent with it, and you like to try to get a blend of it. Now, with intensity, you kind of just have to see where your track lies and say, would this be strengthening at the time or would it not? Because you have to think about what the conditions are. You just have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, things I like to look at most are upper levels. So I like to look at high pressure systems steering this system or any system. Our models show a potential trough or low pressure system coming in to try to kick it out in another direction. And how big is the storm in relation to the upper levels around it that could impact its steering? I think we talked about it before, particularly with this system, what turned out to be a pretty significant factor in having it end up moving west of forecast and into Samar rather than moving kind of more parallel was that the high pressure cells was stronger than anticipated, and even though the storm was also significantly stronger than anticipated, typically that would mean that the storm may be able to push further into these upper levels. Because it's very small in size, it just didn't have the same power to do that compared to cyclone.
Okay, let's see where we're up to now. Some more questions. Is the Atlantic storm an invest yet? I still don't think it is it?
No, it's still an AOI.
Which is interesting for
probably
40%.
within the next 12 hours. People will be freaking out as soon as it's actually designated as 90L, considering in the last night everyone was going crazy and when it wasn't.
Oh, damn. Will 91B be a Category 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale? That's a wait and see. It can't be ruled out. We've had May Category 5s, and obviously the most famous one is the 1991 Bangladesh cyclone, which was one of the most destructive cyclones in real terms that the world has ever seen. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's see. Oh, don't forget, Cedar as well was also a Category 5, but didn't hit at peak intensity. Some people suggesting that the radar is probably the correct one. It wouldn't surprise me, and that would mean that it's still the same westward movement. Another question, and I am finally up to date. Will the tropical weather bulletins show on the same time as last year? Well, we were planning to start tropical weather bulletins on May 15th, but because of the evolution of this major typhoon, the beginning of regular tropical weather bulletins will be delayed. We don't know how long for just yet, but I can promise to you, that we will be doing regular tropical weather bulletins by June the 1st at the latest. That's all I could say on that right now, and hopefully we'll have a nice new format on that too. So that's everything for now. Let's just give you a reminder, a rundown on what Typhoon Vongfong is doing right now. The Philippine name is Ambo. We believe it's just about to move off the coast of Northern Samar, but radar suggests it's much further west, heading towards Masbate. It did reach Category 4 status on our estimates last night or early this morning, local time. We may revise that down in post-season analysis, considering how it capitulated so quickly after that. It did make landfall, though, still as a Category 3. I think we had it down as 120 miles per hour. That was during the overnight here. I think Ethan was on that one with that update. And now we're looking at a 100 miles per hour storm. That's 160 kilometers per hour sustained. But as you can see, it's looking terrible. Raw Satid is currently saying 75 miles per hour. But that doesn't mean that it actually is that weak yet, But if it does continue in this manner for a little longer, for a couple more hours, you could be talking about that 75 miles per hour. So it's a wait and see on that game as well. But it does appear that this weakening trend is continuing. I'm seeing no signs at all on this satellite imagery that it's coming back, guys.
Yeah, but once again, the threat for very heavy rain is still there with this disheveled system, and flooding can be a very big problem. So please, if you are in an area that's flood prone, please take your flooding and typhoon precautions, as the rain from this storm, as we've seen, the rainfall rates are truly incredible. They're off the scale, and that is shown by the radar estimates.
Well, I'm going to hop onto Luke's screen now for a while whilst we do a new SATED estimate. So maybe you could tell us what you're seeing.
Well, now I after what Isaac said off that radar, what he saw on radar, I started just trying to look around on why that might be. So I looked at like the southern part of Samar, and I saw this sort of rotating part right here. And I'm thinking, could this be the center?
Oh, I am seeing it. I am actually seeing it for the first time now, Luke. I think, yes. I think that radar is right.
Because it looks like it's rotating. I hope my eyes aren't deceiving me, but it looks that way.
No, I think you're right. Looking at that black burst, which is just next to that small island. What's the name of that island? Capel Island, I believe it is. Right next to that right now. I think that may be your center.
If that's the center of the storm, we're dealing with a significant issue, really then, of this continuing to move west of what the general forecast has been.
Continuing
and that
to be
means
defined.
that it could be impacting potentially even more different parts of the Philippines than that we were prior assuming could happen. If that actually is the center of the storm, and it's still moved almost due west without too much of a turn to the north.
I think that's convinced me.
Could you redraw what the track would be like if that's where the current center is?
It'll take me a little while. I'm just conducting SATED right now.
I can show a lot of time steps on this track.
Yeah. I will say that's another about, I think, 20-mile move to the west of what we were expecting overall. There are a couple of questions about impacts on Manila. This would increase the odds of a direct impact on Manila. Not necessarily a powerful typhoon, as we saw yesterday, but definitely with some sort of substantial system that at minimum would bring very heavy rainfall and significant rainfall totals as well. The further west it goes at the moment, the higher the odds for Manila impact.
When you look at the long IR, it makes more sense.
And this is one of the occupational hazards when you look at things very short term. Look at it again there. You can see on Luke's screen right now. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So instead of a line like the one that I've drawn here, annoyingly, I think I have to draw the whole thing again. So I'll just trace over that line and show you where we've ended up. Each hour as the storm's been moving along and along, it did that little wobble there, then it made the landfall, then it sunk south just a little bit after landfall, then it stalled for a little bit, then it moved up there, then it moved here, then it moved there, and now this hour it's here. So that's where we are now by the looks of things. And let's just get rid of that old line if we can. There we go. So this now appears to be the track of the storm.
That's the case, then did it actually move that far? Was there some sort of relocation of the center? I'd be curious to find out.
No, I don't think so, but I've got even bigger news for you. We've just done another SATED, and again, I've got to stress this is raw value only. It does not reflect how strong the storm is right now, but if it doesn't improve, it will reflect how strong the storm will be in maybe 3 hours. It's gone down from 75 to 58.
Well, it does look absolutely disgusting. So
believe that.
It does.
I mean, hopefully that keeps up. Hopefully it keeps up then. You'd hope. I would be curious if we have any on-the-ground wind sources that are measuring wind, or at least were recently in Samar. if such things are around. We'd get a direct, more on-the-ground estimate rather than just having to use SATID.
Yes.
There are some.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say there are some observation areas, but I don't see any in the island of Samar.
Ah, that's a shame. So,
Yeah, we'll see.
a few outrageous revelations in the last hour here on Force 13 Live as we continue to track Typhoon Vongfong. And, well, that's quite remarkable, but it does appear almost certainly that this is moving towards the west, as it is still moving towards the west, which is not what we were expecting, or anyone expecting, except one little model.
Euro.
The ECMWF. The only model that had this kind of thing and had a weaker storm, although it didn't quite get that one right. Well, we're going to take a break here. This is Force 13 Live. We'll have more coverage on Typhoon Vongfong as we desperately try and figure out what's going on with it in the next hour. Keep your questions coming in. We hope we're a help. It's really important to us that we know that what we're doing actually matters, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to take your questions, send them in, start your message with Force 13, all in text, and we'll see you in 4 minutes. Hour of live coverage will begin in a moment. Stay up to date with the very latest on our online cyclone tracker on the website force13.com. The latest always on there. You can also find our YouTube channel, Force13, all in text. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter under the same name as well, at Force13 on there. You can also help the project become even better by becoming an Ultimate Fan on YouTube. To see the full list of Ultimate Fan benefits and to join, visit youtube.com/Force13/join. With a special thanks to our top supporters this month. You can also check out our growing merch store so you can show Force 13's colours wherever you go. You can also find a link to our Discord server underneath this video in the description. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Breaking news, we have downgraded Typhoon Vongfong to 90 miles per hour and a pressure of 968 millibars. That's now down to category 1 status on the Saffir-Simpson scale. 90 miles per hour is around 145 kilometers per hour sustained winds. It's going down, but this still remains a significant typhoon which could deliver destructive winds and extremely heavy rainfall. We're here for at least the next hour. My name is Nathan Foy and I'm joined by several of our team for another hour. We're joined by Luke, Isaac, Preston, Strat and Craig for this next hour. Hello to you all.
Good morning. Good morning
Hello.
to you.
So, this weakening that we've now put down on Force 13, do we agree?
Yeah.
Look-
Yeah.
Looks like a mess, so definitely have to say yes to that.
Okay.
Nothing compared to when we went off the air last night.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. There it is again on Luke's screen, which I think is still showing it best at the moment. You can see just how it's travelled in that period of time. It is there. It's continuing towards the west. Now, the big question now is, well, where do we go from here? Down to 90 miles per hour. So that's one good thing, that it's weakening. But okay, it's weakening. We look at the track map. You can just about make out that white line, which is where the track's gone. If it continues further west, you've then got this large area of water, which is the same area of water that Typhoon Melore intensified by 2 categories in 2015 before slamming into Mindoro. So I think that's what's going to be on many people's minds right now, to worry about whether this storm will enter. And I do always forget the name of that body of water there. I'm sure someone can help me. But all
Samar
of that...
Sea.
Is it the Samar Sea? No, I don't think it's called
Yep.
that. Is that...
That's the Samar Sea.
Where's that?
It's where the storm is at from our estimates.
That's just a very small area, though, is it?
hmm Once you get to the west, it's there's other
the area between Masbate and Mindoro.
Mindoro.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about
well,
that area for a prime area of potential development and re-intensification if the storm tracked over there. That's what I would be worried about. So
Sibion Sea or something like that.
I
can't
don't
say the
know.
name right.
I don't know.
I have it on my screen.
So showing a 12-hour projection, we're probably looking at something like that now. Let's just go to Isaac's screen and get that confirmation.
See, it's right there.
If
I don't know if
get
you can
the
see
right
that.
button. The Sibion Sea, that's the one. So that's where we're looking at potential. If the storm does track into the Sibion Sea, then that ain't good news, because that would be prime real estate for this storm to re-intensify. At the moment, if I was to draw a little crude cone of uncertainty like that for the next 24 hours, there it is, tracking directly over that sea. Not good. But as of right now, the storm is weakening, and hey, maybe that weakening will continue. Let's see if we can get some water vapor imagery on this now, because if we can do that, we may be able to see if there's some dry air in the vicinity.
Okay.
Whilst we wait for that, let's go back to Luke's screen if we can, just to show you very close up on what's been going on in those last few hours. If you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air, it's 4 minutes past 10 in the Philippines. You can send us a message. Start your message with Force 13 all in text on our YouTube chat, and we'll be here.
Let's see. I think we're seeing some questions.
Will Vongfong become a Category 2 typhoon again, like Milor did? Well, we were literally just talking about that, so I think that was addressed. That's everything right now, so we're on top of things. There's not a huge amount happening. Actually, we've not shown it for a while. Let's go back and show you those latest warnings from Pegasus. So there they are. Signal 3 warnings for quite a large area. Strat?
Yep, I was going to say they have those warnings have a good bit now, covering a lot of the Bicol region. You gotta wonder, if this track continues, are they going to have to push some of these warnings out further west, too, than they were initially anticipating on some of the other islands?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, though for a lot of these warnings, there's much shorter lead time than, you know, we're used to covering with Atlantic-based storms or Pacific storms, which have, 48 hours usually. The minimum or the maximum time for a warning of any kind for a signal for Pegasus 36. At this rate, they're going to have to start adjusting out to the west pretty quick.
Here's what I will say. This has been a tracking nightmare.
Yeah.
I would agree with you there.
Absolutely.
Like, it's literally done everything we thought it wouldn't do.
I should just point out there's a small correction to make with this image, and hopefully it does it on its own. There it is. La Union wasn't coloured in there on Signal 1. That is now Signal 1. And I don't think there's any other changes on that. I'm not sure, but that's where we're at right now. So just to clarify, most of Eastern Samar, Northern Samar, the northern part of Samar, Biliran, Masbate, Ticao and Boreas Islands, Sorsogon, Albay, Camarines Sur, Camarines Nord, Catanduanes, Marinduque and Eastern Quezon, all under Signal 3. Signal 2 for the rest of the island of Samar, the very northern part of Leyte, including Tacloban, Romblon, Batangas, the rest of Quezon, Laguna and Rizal, and Polillo Island as well. Signal 1 warnings in effect for a little bit further south of Leyte. Some of those islands to the west that we've still not grabbed the names of yet are Oriental Mindoro, Cavite, Manila, Metro Manila, Bulacan, Pampanga, Batan, Zambales, Tarlac, Nueva Ecija, Aurora, Pangasinan, Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino, Isabela, Ifugao, Benguet and La Union. So a lot of those areas under tropical cyclone wind signals. Hopefully a lot of those places in central and northern Luzon won't go beyond stage 1. That would mean that this storm's weakening. But realistically, we'll probably end up seeing at least signal 2s for most of those areas that are under 1. And someone pointing out to me that that island is Panay. I'm not talking about Panay. That's the very large island. I'm very aware of that one. Just some much smaller ones that are coloured blue there, just to the east. I'm just getting that now. Bantayan Island is one of them, and the other one is... trying to get a name on that one. Oh, that's the northern tip of Cebu.
Got some questions coming in the chat asking about the structure of the storm, and then high pressure to the north of it, the one pan have been impacting it. I think we've talked about it a good bit. We've had satellite imagery of the storm up a lot. If you pull up satellite imagery from the past 12 hours, you can tell that in comparison to before landfall, and even the first several hour landfall, the storm looks like a complete and utter mess. If it were to hold this up for several more hours, this current appearance, the raw SAT numbers would probably end up verifying, and it'd be a tropical,
tropical
at
storm.
that point.
Yeah.
Regardless of its intensity, though, and structure, the largest threat overall is still going to be very heavy rainfall over significant portions of land. So just because it looks like an utterly disgusting blob does not mean it isn't life-threatening to you or others around you. So that's why you should still take this storm seriously, no matter what its immediate term appearance on satellite imagery looks like. In terms of the high-pressure system, we did talk about this last night and a little bit in the prior hours, that in general, the two things that potentially led this to continue to charge west of forecast was that the high pressure system up there was stronger than anticipated by the models, and that at the same time, due to the storm's small size, even though it got stronger than we thought it would be in the near term, it wasn't large enough to produce a significant enough influence to push upwards into that high pressure system and steer itself more towards the north, as models are prior indicating. And if we're looking at this right now, and the center really is emerging further west than we even thought it would, that means it's still failing to do that.
Well, what I want to
That
show you...
reads-
Go on.
Go ahead.
I just want to show you now the RGB air mass imagery, which is one of my favorite imageries because it shows you best the structure of a cyclone. Now look at this. This is what's happened in the last, what are we talking here, nearly 12 hours, the progression of the storm. Now you'll see that it made landfall, the eye died off very quickly, and the center just pushed through further towards the west-northwest. I'm going to take the outlines off just to make things a little bit easier to look at, so you can see exactly what's happened here. And what you'll notice in the latest 2 hours or so in particular is what's making it look so bad. The whole eastern side is dying off. It's getting extremely the clouds are just dissipating. The western side isn't looking much better. The western side is breaking apart. The northern side is really getting chopped up into clumps. The southern side is still got a little tail there, but it's really not looking very good at all. We've seen tropical storms look better than this.
And going back to what Strat said before, that you need to take this seriously, it is still, despite the appearance, it looks pretty bad, but it is still producing very heavy rain, and very heavy rain can lead to flooding, and especially in those mountainous areas, landslides and washouts are possible.
Yep. Yeah. It's always very important to note that despite any appearance, that the large majority of deaths from cyclones happen from water and flooding related issues, not wind. So even though the wind can be a very dangerous and extremely strong cyclones, that doesn't discount any storms that are particularly weaker either, or ones that are weakening. You know? We went through this trend where earlier in the storm's life, it looked stronger than it actually was. You know, especially when it was starting to become a tropical storm, it had looked like it for some time, but it just wasn't quite there yet. Now it looks significantly worse than what the actual winds may be, although it is a general trend of weakening. But that, regardless of that, that doesn't mean you should discount any that this may pose at all.
And I think we've just had the comment of the day from Alvin Fu Yong Yao Mo, who says, "This typhoon is ugly." Well said. Comment of the day. Congratulations. Another question that came in, Carol asks, is a landfall in Masbate about to happen, or just cross near Tikau Island and move north? At the moment, it would appear that, it could actually possibly make landfall on both of those islands, but at the minute, probably, I can't tell you, I couldn't say, but those islands are both going to get the, if there is still an eye in that thing, it will get the eye wall. Both of those islands will.
Likely at this point. Got some questions. Asking if Vongfong can strengthen to a Cat 3 again. I think the simple answer to that is, nothing's full, but because its core is completely obliterated, even if it had a lot of time over water, that'd be quite difficult to do at this point.
In my opinion, it would have to pull off a miracle. It looks absolute garbage.
I'd agree with
and it's
Strat's
gonna
terminology. It would be difficult.
Yeah, difficult probably erring to be a bit nice to it, in terms of re-intensifying to a Category 3, because if this holds, then in 3 hours we're probably looking at a upper tier tropical storm rather than last night's peak around potentially Category 4 status. So to get back to major hurricane strength, it might even have to redouble strength, and with probably not a lot of overall time over water. Even though it may be over water now, these islands cluster together, and regardless of that, the general system has large portions of it still over land, disrupting inflow.
But it's the Western Pacific strat. It's the
That's true.
Philippine
Anything can
Islands.
happen in the Western Pacific.
I just
But
want to
it's
remind
a-
people.
Anything
I want to remind people of what one of the most extraordinary things was. Typhoon Utor in 2006 was a Category 1 typhoon on the western edge of Masbate. 6 hours later, it was off the coast of Mindoro as a Category 3.
Why?
It's a crazy thing can happen.
Yeah,
Well,
it's rare.
Doesn't mean
it's-
It's rare.
I mean, basically what's happening was we thought we had one situation, but we actually had two now. We actually had two. The one that we all thought was going to happen was that it was going to stay offshore and continuing to intensify, but probably not make landfall as much on as many islands or affect as many islands as it would have if it moved west. But of course, it would be weaker since it's moving through the islands.
Yep. Instead, we got this mess for Samar and potentially other more western parts of the Philippines than we were initially expecting. I think the best way to say it, that we said it last night, was a complete breakdown in the computer models forecasting where the storm might end up going. I think at this point we're probably at least 70 to 80 miles off within the past 24 hours on these models.
The models are doing great.
Which is for 24 hours, with a storm that had a very defined sense for models to be that far off, if this ends up verifying, is very, very, very strong underperformance. And when you have a storm this close to land and is now impacting land at a different location than anyone really presumed because of that forecasting breakdown, that's where it becomes a large problem, and hopefully something like this doesn't end up happening again in the near future.
Wow. So where do we go from here? Let's take some questions. Or comments even. Here's an interesting one from Alan Song. Barry looked better. I can tell you, Barry did not look better than this. It did
Does
not
this have
look
any-
better than this.
Does this have an exposed center? No. Did this have an eye?
Almost. It wasn't great.
It's had better days.
Be named.
We have some more here. Do we think Ambo will be retired? I still don't really understand the Philippine convention for retiring storms, what the criteria is.
Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, plus the storm's still going on right now, and we don't necessarily know for sure how severe impacts will be in areas. If it's bad enough in Samar alone, it's technically possible, but we still don't know the full scope yet. So it'd be far too early whether or not we think a storm will be retired, just based on a couple hours of it being over land to date. There's still a lot more uncertainty with potential future damages that we're going to have to watch.
Yeah. All right, we'll get back to that shortly.
Someone's asking
yeah, go
what
on.
category is it? Someone's asking what category it is. It's Cat 1 at the moment.
We're giving it Category 1 now. We've just put it. At the start of the hour, we just put it down to 90 miles per hour, which is high-end Category 1 status. That's around 145 kilometers per hour. The JTWC are still running with 100 miles per hour and a pressure of 974 millibars. And I just saw from Pegasa, They've got 155 kilometers per hour, which puts it in a very odd position of being at about something like 96 miles per hour. So that's where Pegasa are at right now as well.
And I just did some calculations from where I think the center is. It's around 28 miles away from that northern island. North of that bigger island. I don't know geography in Philippines that well. It's the one like due west of it, like the northern island. And this is from, I don't know why, but the real Earth imagery is lagging behind substantially. It's like right now 1 hour and 40 minutes behind. But according to this, it's that time, it's 28 miles away.
Well, I'll leave that imagery with you right now, whilst I try and find a better alternative from this end. We'll just leave that up for a little bit. Strat, go ahead.
I was going to say, interesting, just to clear up, I was asking, why is the cyclone tracker say category 2, 98 miles per hour? The answer to that is the fourth cyclone tracker on our website takes in data from the real-time ATCF, the one that updates every 15 minutes, and puts it in a graphical form for people to understand. So
we've put it down to 90 miles per hour, and it can be manually overridden, but we just have no one to do it because we're on the air. So if anyone wants to volunteer and wants to work our system for us, then you're welcome to send a message and we'll have an interview with you, hey?
Yep. I think there is one other thing. Does the storm weaken if it hits Sierra Madre Mountains? I think the easiest way to say is typically, actually almost always, whenever a cyclone heads straight into more mountainous areas, it disrupts the core of the system and leads to weakening. Although, if in a couple hours it's continuing to look this messy, it won't really have too much further down to go.
I thought that the Sierra Madre Mountains were in California.
Well, if that's the case, then this storm is not getting to California.
Oh, no.
Anytime soon, at least.
No, there's one in the Philippines as well, I've just spotted. That's the area on the eastern side of Luzon, usually the area that gets battered by the very strong typhoons that come in from the east. And we've seen it so many times when storms hit that part of Luzon, they just, they're guaranteed to lose 2 or 3 categories when they do that. They are the storm wreckers.
Someone's asking, is there a chance that the storm just continuously moves west?
It'll go west all the way into the Indian Ocean and do a Fujiwara effect with the 91B invest. No, it's got to move north at some point. It's got to move north. And, well, I'll tell you what, if it doesn't, it will lose its steering currents and it will just die off in the middle of the South China Sea. But honestly, it is going to move north inevitably. It's got to. It simply has to.
It'd be insane if it just continued like for too much longer. I know everyone anticipates some sort of move to the west-northwest, sustained at least, not just the little jog it had while over land close to a day ago now. So you got to anticipate that it'll try to round the bend of this high-pressure system eventually. The question is, will it start doing that right now, or will it wait another 50 miles? But
I don't know.
I think in terms of any turn to the north, eventually, is that the law keeps up this way, will be more likely to impact more western parts of the Philippines and Luzon. So the further west this goes for a longer period of time, at least in the short term, the more likely it is that Manila proper, rather than just parts of the metro area, will see elevated rainfall levels from this system. That isn't necessarily speaking for winds at this point, because the fact that it's crossing over this much land has clearly obliterated the core structure of the storm. Right. So you might see a weaker storm, but still heavy rainfall.
Rainfall.
Alex Rayos has sent in a message, a report. from Camarines Sur, which is currently under Signal 3 warnings right now. Light rain and light winds at that point. That's only about, we're probably talking 60, 70, 80 miles away from the center of the storm. Light rain and winds. And content deleted should hang their head in shame, because they just said, I think this storm is uglier than Colin in 2016.
What?
Nothing can really compare to that.
That's just absolute sacrilege. Colin is an abomination, and it is literally the Lord Voldemort of the storm world.
You've got Craig going now, guys.
Oh,
I
look
will
what you've done to
say,
good Craig now.
I think it was a TD for a hot minute off the Yucatan, but it was
Yeah, maybe.
definitely not a TDS.
We'll
It's
say
the
if you want to compare,
protocol that scares me.
if you want to compare this to something, I guess in terms of how bad it looks physically, you could probably compare it to maybe Nestor of last year, which actually was a closed system for some period of
What,
time.
this thing right
like
now?
Palms of Colin.
Well,
No,
that does
I'm
not
just
look
saying in
like
terms of how
Nestor.
bad it looks, not whether or not it's actually a tropical system. I'm just
This
talking
is a
about looks here.
typhoon.
No, you
Nestor
think
was
Vongfong looks as
really a
bad as
tropical
Nestor
storm.
right now? Are you really
think it
saying that?
looks- I think it looks.
Give it a couple
Like-
hours if it doesn't get its act together.
I think a better comparison would be Jerry when it's getting wind sheared.
Yeah, I suppose.
That's not a bad one.
That's
Jerry of last year.
defensible. I can
I
agree
had
with
people
you.
freaking out about that earlier. Someone's asking, is the eye now off of Samar? I think the answer to that
It
is
looks
that
like
if the radar
it looks like
indications
it.
are correct.
Yeah, radar shows
Like-
it. I have my radar up, and it shows it over the island of, I believe it's called Kapul, if I'm not mistaken.
That very small
maybe-
island off Samar, yeah.
And it seems to be right over it on the latest frame. I don't know if I could stop it. Let me see if I could stop it.
We'll say, regardless of that, though, adverse conditions will continue, particularly in the northern part of Samar, significantly across the whole island for still at least several more hours, despite
I gotta
any
say, it looks
indications
terrible.
of the center not being onshore.
So, Luke, you said you had a delay on the imagery earlier. What's your latest image?
It's 1240 UTC.
1240.
Which is-
That's where we're at as well.
I think the Himawari is messed up right now.
Depends what source you use. It's
I mean,
when it's
Real-
smoothly and some.
the JMA.
It's
and
the
Target-
same on RAM, which is what I'm on right now, showing you
Let me
this
check
latest
the
imagery.
I'm gonna
JMA
check the
probably
rapid
has
scan.
the most recent
I
frames
think
because they run the
rapid-
satellite.
Rapid scan is at 1320Z.
Yeah, you're probably better off
we-
looking at the JMA.
Hmm.
We actually have someone in the chat saying Sorsagon, in Bicol, they're saying that they have an update with some very strong gusts and moderate to heavy fall. Well, to them I say, continue to stay safe and monitor the situation around you for sure.
Oh, there we go. There's the mesoscale. Okay, let's. I'm gonna get this image configured properly. Let's go back to Luke's screen, and that's the latest there on his screen right now as well. So.
So what we're seeing right now is that the storm is continuing to move westward in some sort of way, and it's sort of on that island that Isaac was talking about right now, and it looks like it'll make a pretty close approach to that northern island north of what is it?
Kapul?
Kapua, yeah, Kapua, I think, yeah.
The Kapul is the one where the storm, where the eye is over at, is right about where the island of Kapul is to the northwest of Northern Samar.
Yeah,
To the northwest
and,
of Samar, you got the island of to the north of Kapul, you got the island of Sorgon or something. I can't pronounce the island name for the life of me, but it's on my
Clearly,
screen.
none of us are geography majors.
Sorgon or something like
They
that.
certainly aren't.
Sorry. This might be like first year tracking Philippine storms, and I know literally.
It's like my fifth year, and I still don't know how to pronounce some of
Luzon.
these islands.
But if it
Excellent.
continues to move, if it starts to move northwest right now, then it would have to trek through a lot of islands, and then it would go on like the very middle central parts of Luzon, and have to go through those Sierra Mountains.
Yeah,
And
we'll say that, anything can happen in the Western Pacific, technically. We've talked about that before. Crazy things can happen in between these islands. Last year, I think we saw Fanphone jump 2 categories between them. But I think the significant difference, at least for the time being, is that the core structure of this storm is completely disheveled and destroyed, while other storms heading into this phase potentially still had much more structure to work with. So if you wanted to see this storm intensify again quickly on its brief times over water, it needs to very, very rapidly redevelop a strong inner structure. The
And
likelihood of that isn't particularly high, but anything can happen.
And one thing I am seeing out of the microwave imagery and the RGB is we're seeing some dry air intrusion possibly as like the cloud tops are lowering on the eastern side. I don't know if I'm the only one seeing that.
Yeah,
You can see on the
It's
eastern
also
side of the storm.
the cloud tops are just completely dying off on the eastern side.
Yeah.
It's also visible. Well, on radar, it shows it's the southern part is the open part of the storm, according to radar for the moment.
Completely open on the eastern side, and the more I'm looking at this imagery, I've got up to 1300Z now, Luke. And you can see on those latest images just the very northern part. Let's just see if we can go stop that image on that last one. I've forgotten how to mess about with all this. Okay, here we go. Tracking through just to the last image there. You can see, just as we rock those images, just a few areas of cloud that are just getting chopped up and going all over the place, and it's almost starting to look like the whole circulation is unraveling.
And if that happens in terms of potential high wind and speed impacts, that is going to be a very good sign for those that have not been directly impacted yet. I think to clarify, there's a couple of questions about the movement of the storm. People are asking no signs of the west-northwest curve, and people are asking if it's stalled.
It's not stalled.
It hasn't stalled.
No. And it could be west-northwest, but we don't know just yet. And if it is west-northwest, then that's just started.
Yep. And regardless of that, it's still not as much as models forecasted to be to this point. I think they're still playing catch-up because the late runs, the 12Zs, when they come out, will render it at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Philippine Time. So it'll be a couple hours behind, and it'll be interesting to see if they immediately screw up the track again, or if there's some laggers trying to catch on now at this point.
It's not
Questions
very good.
about re-intensification. I think we just had a discussion about it. Anything can technically happen, but the storm would need to rapidly get its act together compared to its current appearance to really put a dent into things.
Okay, I just got some amazing resource from Jason. I'm gonna have to wait to let this load a bit.
No problem.
But it's up to date satellite
I have it
imagery.
right here.
Actually, 1420. Yeah, Isaac will probably be better for that.
Yeah, I have it.
Go ahead.
This is off of the JMA website. I don't know if it's taking a while for my thing to load, but this is off of the JMA website. And this is the latest imagery. This is latest image. Let's see here. Latest image was from 1420 UTC today. It's a really slow loop, so I'm gonna speed it up to the most recent image here. My site will work. Sorry for that. 1420, and you can see the latest image. It still doesn't look too good, and you could kind of make out where that there's a tiny little little dip in the cloud tops there where we think the eye is right now, where my cursor's at. You can see it there on the satellite imagery. But this is the rapid scan. The rapid scan goes every 2.5 minutes at maximum here. Not as fast as Ghost 16 and 17, but still it's workable.
Well, it is slightly older, isn't it, the Himawari?
Yeah, it's from 2015.
Well, let's get so there's some more questions. Tag Force 13 all in text. I have to point out at this juncture, we were billed to go on for 4 hours tonight, but due to the remarkable weakening of this system, we will be concluding our live coverage at the end of this hour in favour of more regular short video updates, which will be uploaded on the Force 13 channel. We take this decision because we feel it's more useful for our time and for your time to get the update regularly when it comes out with the very latest information and a good, concise rundown that's very shareable, that you can show anyone who needs to know in 5 minutes, rather than wait for us to answer questions for half an hour or whatever it is. So that's why we're finishing this coverage at 11 o'clock, and we'll have an update video probably at 1 in the morning, and with more videos in the early to later hours of the morning in the Philippines. So just to make a note of that now. But some more comments. What are the chances of it to re-intensify? Well, as we've said, I'd still say 50-50 on this, but at the moment it's not looking very good, and if it did re-intensify, it probably wouldn't be that soon. Update from Sorsogon province. Wind coming in with strong gusts, moderate to heavy rainfall so far. Is there an intertropical convergence zone in the Philippines? And if there is, does it have anything to do with the storm? Well, I guess it formed out of one, didn't it, when it was way south?
Yeah, it was, at least for this time of year, not typical formation location. You know, we talked about this last night briefly, but for viewers that were, one of the struggles in trying to find potentially similar analogs, which are track storms from similar locations in the past, is that most of the storms this time of year that approached the area where the storm was, about 36 hours ago, day and a half ago, was that they all typically formed much further to the south and east, particularly significantly further to the east than what we saw with this. Vongfong here formed pretty close to Mindanao along the southern Philippines, and just moved north before hooking back to the west, and now inland in the Philippines. The other storms that we were considering possibly having similar tracks formed way further out in the Philippine Sea and took, days of approaching from the east and south, kind of moving, west-northwest to northwest, and even some due west, to really get to the Philippines in general in the first place. Plus, the analogs we were looking at had much stronger curves to the north, more skirting the coast of the Philippines rather than trying to plow straight inland as we're seeing right now.
So really, all the research counted for nothing.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Kind of just threw it all to trash. It basically didn't
dear.
care. It didn't care about history.
And as I said just a few moments ago, we'll be finishing at the end of this hour. Just to point out, you can also join us on social media, Force 13 on Facebook and Twitter. And of course, you can join our Discord server if you have Discord. You just saw it flash on the left-hand side of your screen there. Links underneath our video in the description. And that is a link there that will get you into our server. There's a little, sort of like a waiting room there to get you approved. So, have a little bit of patience, because a lot of us are manning the stream rather than accepting people through. But it's a great place, over 500 members at this point, and they talk about anything and everything, usually tropical weather, but we also cover other weather and other natural disasters and just anything. It's really a growing community at this point, and I think community really is what is needed around about this time. I shouldn't read this one out, but Noria Martinez Boras says, I think Vongfong has got the coronavirus.
What?
Oof. I mean,
dear. Oh dear.
It's definitely looking a bit sick.
I didn't say it,
Yeah.
a commenter said that, okay.
Sure did say that.
It's the C word that must not be named.
We'd rather not name it, because
Yeah,
it just
YouTube
makes
does
people.
not-
No, YouTube's fine. It just as soon as you mention that word, you just get eye rolling, don't you, from everyone involved. there's a question here from Ike. What is the sea temperature? Sea surface temperatures around the islands in the Philippines internally, generally around 30 degrees Celsius. Just offshore, probably slightly lower, about 29.
We had someone saying that they're in Bicol and I think it's Caminare Sur, saying that the winds are getting stronger and that the rain is intense in time. So an update from a local about their ongoing situation as well.
I'm not the first one. We really appreciate things like that. They're very important. Even if you may not think it's particularly important, getting your information out there about your location. Not only are you helping other people who might be in the area or not too far away to expect something soon, but also people who are watching here from all around the world. There's a lot of Philippine descendants and relatives who live in various parts of Europe, here in the UK, in the Netherlands, on the Arabian Peninsula, who are all maybe watching this and wondering about their loved ones. So that is also very important, that you might be making a difference and putting people at ease if your conditions are fine, if you've got the all clear in your area, and of course what's going on if things are getting pretty bad. Let's see what else we've got here. Will we be reporting about the new one in the Indian Ocean out of curiosity? Well, we are stepping up operations on that one starting today, so you'll see a lot more about 91B on social media as the day goes on, and especially as we get into tomorrow. What strength is it now and where is it centered? So just another recap. We have downgraded this storm to 90 miles per hour, which is around 145 kilometers per hour. Sustained winds still. The JTWC is saying 100 miles per hour, which is 160 kilometers per hour. Weakening, though, by all accounts. Pagasa, they're saying 155. They'll have an update in 20 minutes. That's when we're going off. And we expect further weakening by the looks of things, because the appearance of this storm is, as we've said, and we're running out of superlatives, pretty atrocious.
And also, ATCF has the storm at 85 knots and 974 millibars as of the latest update.
Patriots tracking says CMC has Arthur pulling a Sandy and coming near New York as extratropical, and that's the point where he got timed out by Strat. And we've got Evan Miller saying,
I didn't time anyone.
I'm getting word from Bulan Sorsogon, roof destroyed and leaking. And I think we'll be getting a lot of stories like that from these areas.
Yeah. You're going to see a lot of heavy rainfall causing significant through roofs, basic damage, unfortunately. Someone's asking, what was the landfall intensity of Vongfong? I think it was the 120 miles an hour,
about
if I'm not
120.
mistaken.
Whilst
About 120.
Is it Luke showing the models right now?
I can show them.
Isaac's showing those models right now. Well, we may as well have a little bit of fun here. Isaac, talk us through this.
Well, this is the CMC model as of the 0Z run, newest run.
No,
this is 84 hours out. This is 84 hours out, 10 meter wind speeds rather. You can see 108 hours, 999 millibars. Further out in time, 126, 987, 138, 987, and then 156, 998, and then 168. The isobars are messing up there, and 180, 1007, and then if this continues into New Jersey as a weakening storm past that point.
Yuck.
There you go.
Yuck.
I will say, in the past 36 hours, models have the consensus between models is that this low pressure system will end up kicking the storm out to sea. A flip-flop between some of the models instead wrap the storm into New England, or the northern mid-Atlantic states instead. The first one to do it about a day and a half ago. Then it backed off, but then the European model picked it up saying that would happen.
Oh, dear.
Then the European has backed off from that, saying it'll go out to sea instead. Now the CMC is saying it'll do it. I think regardless, the overall trend, the storm of interest, it probably will be designated 90L later today. Where it ends up being will probably be, at least in the United States, closer to the coast than what was thought 2 days ago. But regardless of that, it's probably a bit too far up to make too heavy speculations for anything north of the Carolinas.
Whatever.
But
Here's the thing. Where it forms, where it goes, how it does it, it's still gonna look pretty trash. No matter
that's
what.
a good point.
yeah, and talk 91B, it's a similar thing. The actual center forms and has a definitive location that models can pinpoint. It is going to be significantly harder for them to get anything accurate in terms of an accurate forecast. And even then, they can start, as we've seen them fail nearly completely with Vongfong. But you got to take, especially when a system isn't even formed yet, forecasts with a grain of salt, especially anything phase 2. I know we use more for just showing what the realm of possibilities can be in hypotheticals, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anything will happen. Just because a couple of models have been flip-flopping, slinging the storm into the northeast, creating what would definitely be an interesting situation.
No.
That means still a likelihood that such a thing will not happen.
All right, we got another 15 minutes
keep
here
that in
before
mind.
we close up. There's some more questions. Gary says that 91B is looking scary on the satellite imagery. I've not seen it yet, I'm afraid.
Let me go ahead and look at that.
Whilst you do that, MJ Rickerfort says, will it possibly hit Manila? Again, it depends what you mean by whether it will hit Manila. Will there be typhoon force winds there at this stage? I'd say no. Will there be tropical storm force winds? Probably. I think we've got it down as about 66% chance. Will there be heavy rainfall? Absolutely. Could it reach 300 millimeters? Maybe if it deviates a little bit to the west, but we're probably looking more around the 50 to 100 millimeter range for the Manila area in total rainfall. I think Colin may have been a subtropical category 1. Okay.
What?
That's another comment we've received.
right.
Could Vongfong have been stronger? Well, I think you can say, could any storm have been stronger? Every storm could have been stronger. If that IWAR replacement cycle, what we thought was one at least, didn't happen, then maybe Vongfong would have made landfall as a super typhoon.
Or
Yeah.
maybe if it stayed more north.
I think you could
There's always
the
a
land
possibility.
of the land of hindsight 2020 is a lot of what
Of
ifs.
course.
But I guess you'll just have to wait for the start of 2021 or something when the what might have been 2020 Pacific season animation comes out.
Oh no.
Let's
Eventually.
not get there already. This is like 6
Wait
months
another
out.
7 months first.
Hold your horses. Come on.
Gian
hold your horses.
TV says, radar data shows the center is already just grazing the southern tip of Sorsogon. Very strong winds in Ormoc City, Leyte. Signal 2 up for that location.
Yep, I have radar right now, and it's here it is right there. And
We're just catching up
talking
on
about
that. There we are. Yep.
talking about the central location. I would from earlier, like way earlier in the stream, I would be inclined to agree that it's been going a lot more west than predicted earlier, or than we thought earlier. Both I looked at the radar to the southwest of this. It also confirmed that the storm was farther west, and I looked at the one that we were looking at last stream from the area down here where my cursor's at, if we could see that, and it also confirmed that it was in the same area. So it's not a radar glitch of any kind. That's the actual center right there that we're looking at.
Totally is.
Unfortunately.
So
And
at
we
this
look at a
point,
single site.
there's another site, yeah.
Oh, it's loading.
So it would appear to me that it will make a landfall on Ticao Island, which is the one on the left-hand side there.
Let me see if I could highlight that for a second. Oh, nope, it's not going to work.
It's very interesting.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's a better perspective. You can see more of where it is on the map.
regardless of anything with the location, though, it is all important to keep in mind that this is a storm wherever it's impacting directly at the moment. So, for Samar Bicol regions in particular at the moment, despite its increasingly disheveled appearance, it's still a dangerous storm.
Exactly.
All right, well, we've got about 10 more minutes to run here. It looks like a foregone conclusion now with Typhoon Vongfong. Not saying that it's no longer a threat, but the threat appears to be rather clear. And we've been yammering on about that for nearly 2 hours. If you've just joined us and you're expecting the 4-hour stream that we advertised, the storm has disintegrated so much we don't really feel it's necessary to do it anymore. We don't want to bore you too much. We're going to condense into some smaller updates. The next one will be at 1 a.m. Philippine time. We'll be doing an update video. And then we'll probably have another update video at about maybe 8 a.m. Philippine time tomorrow. We will have an update on 91B as soon as it becomes a tropical depression, for those who are asking. And I don't know if anyone wants to show some models on that right now whilst we've got a bit of time.
I'm right on it, actually.
Yeah? Alright, let's...
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get this in just a moment. There we go.
Okay, I hope this is zoomed in enough. So we see this 91B there, and then it finally forms a low level center. And then around 36 hours out, I would say this is either a tropical depression or a tropical storm. And then it keeps getting stronger at actually 974 millibars at forecast hour 66. And then this keeps going up, and it keeps getting stronger more since actually 944. This is the 5-day period. This is at 944. And then we see this in 138 hours, and this is really close to making landfall. I think this is where the peak would happen. That's where most models have been hinting at. Because after that, the millibar rises a bit, and then it makes landfall around 9:50 hour. Yeah, 9:50 hour. That was the GFS run. Now the Euro shows a completely different situation, actually.
Oh my goodness.
The model spread, once we get closer to a potential landfall point, is very wide at this point in time.
Yeah.
You have anything from potentially a meal, the storm going that far east, to north-central parts of the eastern coast of India with the storm if it moves that far west. So a huge overall swath of land that has to be monitoring this system carefully, because all indications now are that words of impacting, it will impact strong storm.
Now,
Nothing Go ahead.
Continue, Preston.
Nothing is set in stone with track. Intensity is still not set in stone as well. It looks to be that this could be a strong cyclone, and that's something everyone in eastern India, southern Bangladesh, and western Myanmar really need to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, I have a satellite of 91B right now. If any of you want to look at that.
I'll tell you what though, Luke, you better hope that ECMWF model isn't right. Because you'll have some more pronunciation issues. Places like Visakhapatnam in India, Vijayawada, and also Rajamahendravaram as well. That location in India. Let's hope it doesn't go anywhere near there, or indeed anywhere, because we are here to track the storms when they happen. We're here if you need us, but honestly, we hope you never need us to track these storms.
Just like the 5-day forecast air, the GFS is in this area, and the Euro is in this area, and there's such a huge split just in the 5-day period.
Yep, so a wide array of possibilities on that one as well, so that's just something else to look at over the next few days. Things are going to get very busy around the world, but as it is right now, Typhoon Vongfong, if you've just joined us, I'll give you another recap. It's down to 90 miles per hour, that's 145 kilometers per hour, sustained winds. Still a dangerous typhoon, but it has weakened substantially since it made landfall in Samar early this morning. and now it is it's just about moving over, just about to reach Tikau Island, and will probably still be a Category 1 by then. But I have to tell you right now, on satellite appearance, it is weakening extraordinarily. Raw SATID values are right down to 58 miles per hour. Not saying that's the current intensity, but if it keeps up looking so bad for another 2 or 3 hours, this thing may lose typhoon status. In any case, if it does lose its intensity, rainfall will definitely be the maximum risk, because this thing we saw earlier when it was moving over Samar at times, delivering 75 millimeters of rain per hour over some parts of Samar. And that could happen anywhere else. And if you're getting 75 millimeters of rainfall per hour, things will get pretty nasty pretty quick. So I think flooding will be the biggest concern for most of these areas, all the Signal 3 warning zones, and probably extending up quite a large chunk of central and northern Luzon as well. We've got just a couple more minutes here. Any final words from the team?
Just in general.
It's quite remarkable how quickly this storm just completely fell apart. It still poses a great risk via flooding. The winds are still projected to be around 90 miles an hour at this time, so the threat is not over. However, it is significantly weakened in the past 6 hours.
Yep. I think we talked about it last night, is that, when a storm is small, because even though we've been zoomed in on it mostly for this stream, if you zoom out and look at the really big picture of the basin, this is mostly a dot. Even though they can ramp up really quick, they can ramp down just as quickly as well, and that looks to be what we've, fortunately, at least in speed threats, been seeing. But overall, as we head off, particularly for those watching today and into the future that may be in harm's way from the system, to stay safe, make sure you're keeping your home nice and prepared to the best of your ability, and to listen to all orders from local officials that are doing their best to protect you in these times.
We have updates on our social mediums on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our YouTube updates. Search Force 13 all in text, and you can get all of the latest information. Also, I would like to point out that we have our own community group, Force 13 International. You can ask to join that group as well, and that is where you can post all of your own observations, opinions, and anything you want really, as long as it relates to generally the weather. A new community there, Force 13 International on Facebook, and of course we're on Discord, so take your pick. There's loads of outlets that we're on, and we're happy to have you, and we're happy that we're glad that you joined us today, and we hope that we did our job as well as we could possibly do, and we'll be back next time. We'll have more updates on this storm. We won't be abandoning you, but I think that's probably going to be all for the live events on Typhoon Vongfong, because we have other systems developing now, but we will keep you abreast of all the latest updates in those short videos. That's it for now. Have a good night. Coming up to 11 PM in the Philippines, nearly 4 PM here in the UK, and on behalf of myself and the team, have a great rest of the week, if possible. Of course, underneath this typhoon and the end of the world that's going on elsewhere. And we'll see you again soon. Good night.
Good night.
Take care.